super. So we'll do a bit of a brief overview of the ePortfolio just to remind you, and then we'll go really in depth looking at what you need to add, then how to submit it, and then how to improve it as well before that. So just a reminder, you hopefully can see on the screen now on Moodle, and I've clicked the assessments tile, oops, assessments, and if you scroll down here, you'll see there's lots of information about the ePortfolio. If we click here, the ePortfolio information and resources, and in here there's all the different informations about each one of the entries on the ePortfolio. So you can look at those to see what you need to do if you've not finished any of them yet, or when you're going through evaluating them, I'd recommend you get these open and have a look and say, have I actually answered the question? Is there anything I can do to answer it better? What you've got to bear in mind is that you started the ePortfolio back in October and November time. And each and every single one of you, your writing style has phenomenally improved. Everything you've learned, your knowledge, your understanding of the subject has hugely improved in that time. And so the purpose of the ePortfolio is to allow you to show off your knowledge and your understanding, to show off your writing style and how it's improved and so on. So you need to go back to those early entries, the entry 1 and entry 2 particularly, because you did them before you gained these skills and this knowledge about the subject. So go back to them, go through them, almost you're the marker, you evaluate them now. Think, how can I make this better? I want to make it really, really good. All of you should be really striving to get a super duper mark here. So really can't emphasize enough. You've got the opportunity now to go back and to revisit your work and to make it better. So do that, do take up that opportunity. So you look through these to see what you need to do. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop that share and show the checklist, which is on there as one of the files that you can open. And I'll share this now. And we've shared this with you many times, the ePortfolio checklist. I'll just make it a little bit bigger, hopefully. And here we are. So to begin with, you can obviously use this to check everything off, but pretty much you should have done it all by now. That's the thing. So you should have made the Google site, edit the design. This is super duper important. Can't emphasize it enough. Share the ePortfolio with your relevant tutors. So what we mean by this is if you do core 1 of early childhood only, you need to share it with your Tuesday seminar tutor who marks your work. So that's myself, Helen, or Jane, and with Jane as the head of the year. If you're doing core 2 as well, then you obviously need to share it with your core 2 tutors, which is Ruth and myself. So you need to share that with us as tutors. That's so we can mark it. So it's quite important. There's nothing worse, I've got to tell you, it's really, really difficult when we are marking work and suddenly we can't access your work to mark it. And it's really tricky, and then we have to contact you and ask you to share it and all this, and it's all really difficult and means a delay in you getting your mark back. So really, really important that you share the ePortfolio with us. You don't need to share it more than once. Once you've shared it, that's it shared, okay? Each page, you don't need to, just the one share does the whole thing. Then you should have uploaded all of the different entries with their supporting documents. And so the stage you're at now is these stages here, to reread them, to look out for things like no typos, no presentational errors, and the referencing requirements. So just to remind you, on Moodle, you can find the university referencing guidelines. Many of you are getting really good at these now, really proficient. Use those to make sure that you have got your referencing technique really, really right. So in the text, it should be the surname and the date, and then the reference list at the bottom, the various things with the initial, the book name, the paper, the journal name, that kind of thing. Also here, This I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. Read them and revise them to include your new knowledge and understanding and analysis that you've developed and learned during the year. So, as I keep saying to various different students, this is your chance to show off all that you know and all that you understand. So if you've got that opportunity, why would you not? You know, you've all gained so much knowledge and understanding this year, so show it off. Also, you need to make sure you've submitted the minimum file attachments, which we'll look at now as well. Okay, and we'll talk about that. Okay, so let's go now and look at the file attachments for each one. So we will, we'll go back to Moodle, share this again here. So when you go into assessments, you go down here and you see Jane's put this folder here, ePortfolio attachment tasks, information and details. So these are things, if you've missed them, like if you missed a particular seminar, a particular tutorial or whatever, you can go on here and find any of the missing tasks, and then you can complete them as best you can on your own and upload it. So making presentations and that kind of thing. If we then go back to the other folder, whoopsie, and open this up here, let's look first at the ePortfolio entry. Okay. I'll just redo that share, sorry, it doesn't follow through very well. Okay, here we are. So I've opened this up. Okay, constructs of childhood. So you see here, you're supposed to do the writing here, all about 500 words and 250 words. And that is improving your early assessment. So you'll remember back in the midst of time in October, you did the work, we gave some feedback, and you were able to then improve it and put it on your ePortfolio entry. So just to clarify again, you're able to edit anything on your ePortfolio until the submission deadline. So the supporting files for this one are your reflections on learning, which is the other file that's on Moodle just below this one. The paragraph on the constructs of child, which we introduced in the week 2 tutorial. Something about children's, the presentation about children's rights. And then either your induction week pre-task, which I think was finding a picture or a newspaper article about a child, or your notes from the week 3 seminar, which was the debate about childhood. Okay, if you haven't got these and you're not able to sort of find a substitute one, let us know, and we can find you something else to do. So that's what you need for the first one. And I think so these are, so you need 4 tasks on the first entry. You can choose either that or that. If you haven't got these 4, contact us, myself or Jane, or your seminar tutor, and we'll provide you with something else that you could do instead. So that's the first entry. Let's have a look at the second entry, which was all about child development, and make sure what we need to do there. So here we go, the second entry. Again, 750 words of text, which we're going to look at in a moment. And there's lots of hints here. I would recommend you look through this guidance again before you hand it in. And then here we see the attachments is a minimum of 3 out of 4 to be added to this ePortfolio entry. And there are the different 4 things. Once again, if you haven't got those, contact us and we'll help you. Then let's have a look at entry number 3, which is research with children. Of course, these are the 3 main ones. There is the careers one, but that is less essential, really. It's not actually a piece of academic work. So again, we have this research with children, which you've just been doing recently, 750 words, and the attachments here, it needs to be 2 from the 4 listed to be attached on. Okay, so if you haven't got all 4, that's fine. Just make sure you've got 2. Of course, you can add extras. There's no limit at all on what you add on. Again, if you're struggling, feel free to ask us and we'll give you a hand to find something as an alternative one. And then finally, you've got the 4th entry, which is careers here. And so again, you've got your 750 words, which are your reflections really on your careers journey and where you're up to and so on. And then you've got your 3 career tasks there to complete on there. Okay, so hopefully that's helped you with your attachments. So now we're going to go and have a look at the actual e-portfolio and see how it's all working and make sure that it's all there for you. So you should have your e-portfolio. It should be your student name with this afterwards, EC e-portfolio. And that means that we're able to find it again when we're marking. So I don't have a student number or a staff number. We each have our surname, but for you, it'll be your student number and then EC e-portfolio. Okay, and then yours hopefully will look a lot nicer than this. You can have an introduction page here. You could put a photo or any photos that you like. Talk a bit about, you know, how you find doing the e-portfolio task and so on. Just a bit of introduction. GPC will only be if you were doing core 2 part of the course. So if you're only doing core 1, you'll only have the core 1 part. If you're doing core 2, you'll have that as well, obviously. If I click on my site map, that's quite a nice way for me to see all of the different pages. So again, for the majority of you who are just doing core 1 early childhood, and then you have your other subject, you will only have these 4 pages here: constructs of childhood, child development, research, and careers. So let's look first at constructs of childhood. Sorry, actually, somebody was asking me earlier about moving these around. If you click here, this button, manage pages, and then open it, you can then drag them around a bit and move them if you want to change the order or anything like that. So let's go to constructs of childhood. Just to remind you again, in case you've forgotten, because we started this all a long time ago, if you want to edit the page, you need to use this pencil here at the top. You click here, and then it turns it into sort of editing mode, and then I can type in the text here. What we sort of, and then you need to click save afterwards. What we recommend is that perhaps if you're editing your actual writing a lot, maybe you do that in Word and then copy it into here to avoid losing it. But you can use all the different things here, all the different styles. You can put links in. So if you want to say, like, I don't know, perhaps this one here, you want to put the web link to the UN Rights of the Child, for example, you can click there and put a link. A web link. You can lay out it however you like, really. And there's a picture there, which was one of the things. Actually, you should have 2 pictures on here. And then we've got the reference list. And then, so this is my 750 words here, all about constructs of the child. And then the reference list, and then the files at the bottom here, uploaded. Okay. So that's what the first entry should look like. As I say, there should be 2 pictures there, though. When I've finished editing, I go to the top here and click save. And there we go. Now, let's have a little look at the next one, which is all about child development. Where's it gone? Disappeared on me. Okay, we'll go core 1 here. And child development. You can have different layouts and so on. Okay. Just as well to flag up to you, the button at the top here is if you want to add another page. So if you haven't yet added, for example, your careers page or whatever, you could add that. Or if you want to add like a photos page or an introduction page or something like that. You can go into this more actions. This has got things like copy a page, move a page. You probably don't need that too much. You can do sharing, but it's much simpler to use this button here to share. In case you haven't shared it, or actually you should probably all do this to check who you've shared it with. Click on share, and then it comes up with anybody that you've shared it with. So you can see, in my case, I've shared it with Jane and Ruth so far. If I wanted to share it, let me say, I don't know, Cleona. I would type her name and it would come up like this, or you can do the full email address if you want. Click there, and then you can choose what you're going to do. So do you want them to edit it? Well, actually, staff don't need to edit it or view it. Probably that's more appropriate. And then it says tick, notify people, and then you click send. You could also send a copy to yourself by clicking that, if that's helpful, and then send it. And then as staff, we get a notification, which helps us to find it. Super. So we've got up to the second one, hadn't we? So child development, again, you've got your 750 words and your references here and files here. Now you can see already there's not as many files here as possibly what you have. So do as many as you can. There's no limit. You can just upload those. Then we've got research with children. Nice little picture here. Once again, pop your writing, your 750 words here. There's a nice word cloud been added, and reference list and the files here. Then the last page, here we go, careers. Where are we? Careers. Mine are in a funny order on here. And then you'd write your reflection here and then upload your files there. So that's what it should look like. Now, I'm going to show you next about submitting it before submission day, hopefully. Don't leave it till the last minute. So I'll show you about submitting it, but then I'm going to spend the rest of the time talking about how you can improve it and make it really, really good. So somebody's just asked a question, is there a certain text font that's needed? No, just something that looks clear to read, easy to read. I'd avoid sort of fancy squirrely sort of ones. Anything that you can read clearly is good. So, you know, the kind of text that you'd expect on a website, really. So Times New Roman, sans serif, Arial, any of those sort of fonts really is fine. You can play around a bit in your headings if you want to. That's fine. Actually, it is good to do 1.5 line spacing, because that makes it easier for the marker to read. And then somebody's asking, do we need to include the word count for each main body of the text? Yes, it would be good to include the word count. It's not absolutely essential, but it's helpful to us, really. How can you make the pages look better? Can you add colour? Yes, good question. Let's have a little look at that now. So I'll open it up again. Right, let me move this bar. So let's try and play around a bit with the careers. So edit my page. Right. So I could, for example, select this. I could change the colors here. Let's make this purple. What else is this one? We could have a text background, maybe yellow. Oh, I think this is going to clash quite badly. There. And then we could have little indents as well. We could have things centered at the side and so on like that. Layout, we could have it in different columns here. You can see the different sorts of a heading with 2 columns, 3 columns there, whatever sort of layout you'd like, some sidebars or something. If you want to put some, maybe your references in the sidebar, play around with those a bit. You can insert a table if that's relevant. I'm not quite sure if that's needed for it. Format, just simple, like the wording. And then you can use this to insert images or links or things like that. So that's that simple way, but I think we can also change the, let's just save that. Oh, it hasn't changed my writing, has it? We can actually change the template style. So I'm pretty sure that's in the settings here. Here we are, page templates. Change the page template. So click on that. Sorry, that was in the settings at the top there. And then we can choose what templates we want to use. And so you can play around with it there. I think there's also some different styles though. Can't just find it right now. Perhaps if any other students know how to change the template, that would be nice if you could let us know, because I have seen it, but I can't see it right this second. So perhaps if somebody would help us type it in the chat, that would be kind. Thank you. Okay. So what I want to show you next, this is super duper important, is how to submit the work before the deadline. So you have to do this in 2 ways, okay? When we're marking the e-portfolio, we mark it differently than every other piece of work. We're going to mark it on Turnitin like usual, and then we're also going to mark it on your e-portfolio site here. So I'm going to show you what you need to do. I'm going to go to my first entry. So work on it, get it really good, get all of everything really, really great, which again, I'll talk to you in a minute about how to do that. And then we do this. We're going to copy all of the text off entry 1, which is the constructs of childhood, including my references there. Oh, there we go. All the way up to there. And then I'm just going to have to stop the share and go into Word and share that. Oh, sorry, share that. Okay, so here I've got a blank Word document that you can see here, and I'm going to put ePortfolio. You can put your cover sheet as the first page, just like you do with every other piece of work. ePortfolio, you know, I might put my name, Holmes S1, or whatever your student number is, and then I'm going to put entry 1, and then paste the information there. Now, my settings have gone a bit haywire there, so you need to make sure that obviously it's readable. Mine has pasted as a table, so that's a bit of a pain, but you can copy the text across. Then after that, I'm going to put, perhaps leave a few lines or maybe start a new page, and I'm going to put entry 2, and then I'll just swap back to my ePortfolio, and I'm going to open up my second page. I'll share this with you. Here we go, child development. So I'm going to copy all of that text again, my 750 words of writing and my reference list, copy that. Then I'm going to go into the Word document. Get that. Oh, where's it gone? Here we are, document. Share that with you. So I've got entry number 2, and I'm going to paste all of that. Again, I need to move that, get that formatting over. Then I'm going to put entry 3 and do the same again. Paste the information, and obviously I cheated there, but you need to go to your thing and get your information for entry 3. Then I'm going to put entry 4, and then I'm going to go and get my information and paste it in there. So there I've got my all 4 entries in one single Word file. Okay. If you are doing core 1 and core 2, you need 2 separate files. So one to hand into core 1 with just your core 1 4 entries in, and one to hand into core 2 with just your 4 entries in there. And when you've got this, you save it, you submit it to Turnitin exactly like you do with your a normal piece of work. At the same time as that, you need to make sure that your ePortfolio site is completely finished and you've shared it with your tutor, and that's essentially handing it in. Because what we do to mark the ePortfolio work is that we mark it twice. So we go on to Turnitin, we open up your file with your 4 entries in, and we use that Turnitin to look at the similarity rating. So, you know, all the highlighting. Basically, we're checking that it's not copied from elsewhere. It's more difficult to do that without using Turnitin. So that's the reason. So we do that, check it's not copied from anywhere, but then we go to your ePortfolio site, your Google site, which is why you need to share it with us. And then we basically do most of the marking on there. So we're going to read all your writing, the 750 words. We're going to look at each one of your attachments and check you've got enough attachments. We're going to look at your pictures, your presentation, all that kind of thing. And then we're going to go back to the Word file, to the Turnitin, and we'll type your feedback and your grade onto Turnitin, just like you get it from a normal assignment. So So marking the e-portfolio happens in 2 places. So it's super duper important that you're submitting it on Turnitin with a Word file with all the entries in it in one file, and you are submitting on your e-portfolio site. Not submitting, sorry, sharing that. And anything that you've submitted previously for your e-portfolio doesn't count, just anything that you're uploading for this entry does. Okay, I'm going to pause for a moment and feel free to ask any questions, and then I'm going to spend 10 minutes talking about adding in sources and critiquing and so on. So feel free to type any questions. I'm just going to read some of these. Somebody's saying about, it's in the settings part, but edit site layout. Okay, we'll have a look then. Okay, so somebody's asking, do we need to copy and paste the attachments? No. The only thing that you're putting in your Word file is the 750 words of your writing. The attachments, we go and look at them on your Google site. So somebody's saying, if you want to check your similarity, if you want to check your similarity, you can submit it just as, but it won't make any difference. You can submit it as one file, just all 4 entries in one file, submit that and check your similarity. There's no need really to check them separately. It won't affect anything really there. So any other questions on that? Now let's have one final try at the, where's it gone? The trying to improve the design of the thing. Let's see if we can work this out. Here we go. So I thought somebody is saying it's in the in here, edit site. Ah, right, thank you. Here we are. So in this settings here, thought it was in here, but couldn't just see. Edit site layout. Thank you so much for helping with that. Edit site layout. Okay, so you can do headers, horizontal bars, sidebars, change the width and so on, change the sidebar. But you can add pictures as much as you like, really, and make it as colourful as you like and so on. Okay, so that is how you have to hand in your e-portfolio. So, but what we want to do is to make sure that your work gets the best possible grade that you can. And the way that, 2 of the ways that you can do that best is by adding more sources and by critiquing and analysing there. So I'm going to go back to my e-portfolio and show you, in fact, the first entry, Constructs of Childhood, because I think at first glance, you can probably see there are quite a few references here. There's this one and this one. We've got this reference here. We've got John Locke. We've got a reference here and here. And so what we can see is throughout this writing, even without reading it, this student is using references to support what they're saying. So at this level of study now, you have to use references. Unfortunately, as wonderful as we all are, our opinion doesn't count. And so we need to use other writers to back up what we're saying. And so I would suggest, to be honest, I think these paragraphs are a bit short, if I'm honest. I would like to see them longer, which means you can discuss a bit more in depth. I was talking today to a student about discussing in depth, and this is a good example of that. So it says here, one of the main concepts of childhood is a time in which we nurture and advance our cognitive, emotional, and social physical being. And then it goes on to talk about Locke says this, and the type of play. But again, could we think of some other things to talk about this, about how our different cognitive, emotional, social, and physical being is developed and nurtured? Perhaps we could think of some other ideas. Perhaps we could mention the EYFS or the rights of the child, the UN rights of the child, or something like that. So there is a bit more in depth of a discussion rather than just dropping in a few ideas and then moving on to the next paragraph. Really, if you can have a paragraph with, say, 8 or 9 sentences at least, I think that allows you, and that's all about one idea. So for this one, it would be all about how you can nurture the development of a child. Lots and lots of ideas about that. It's much better to do less different ideas, but to go much more in depth, to discuss it in depth. And the way to do that is to get this information from a writer. Let's say here, it starts here. It was suggested by historian Arias, 1960, that children through history were not seen to be any different from adults and held the same rights and obligations. And then it goes on to talk about this. But actually, that's just, you're just giving one idea there. So perhaps here, this is how to get kind of an A grade of work, is to then add here, has anybody else viewed children differently? Or has anybody else viewed children like this? How does this connect with modern day? How does this connect with ethics or the UN rights of the child? How does this connect with the child's well-being or their development? You could make comments to say, for example, it may be that adults are forcing children to develop quicker than they naturally would if they were allowed to play, and that kind of thing. So actually, it's good to just pause and think, okay, I'm not going to write, I'm not going to move on to the next paragraph, but first, I'm going to spend time really in depth discussing this point, because that is what gets you the A quality work. And by doing that discussion, you're bringing in lots of references too. And the thing is, again, of course, this piece of work was first written back in October, November time, when you didn't know about all of these other things. And you didn't have all of the different sources, but now you do. So go back and really, really analyze your work and think, really rewrite it to make it really, really strong by discussing in depth and by adding many more sources to back up what you're saying, but don't just add them for the sake of it, but make sure that you're interacting with the different sources. Okay, I'm just going to show got a couple more questions now. Somebody's asking, is it plus or minus 10%? Yes, that's right. Yeah. So you can do 10% over on each one. That's fine. Okay, I have got now a couple of things to show you to help you with your critical writing and your sort of in-depth analysis and argument and so on. Because what I want you to kind of picture is that it's like you're sitting in a courtroom and you're the judge. You're sitting at the table and you are kind of weighing up and trying to decide who's right in this argument, who's got lots of different evidence. And it's all around the table, all the different writers from all the different books are sitting there around the table, and it's your job to bring them all in at the correct time. So it'd be a bit pointless to bring in this writer here to talk about, I don't know, infants and babies, and then suddenly to bring in this writer over here to talk about teenagers if there's nothing that connects them. So it's your job to think, when is it appropriate to ask people to bring their different ideas, but it's also your job to think about how they connect together. So you'll write and you'll say, you know, Smith said this and this, but this contrasts with the idea of the EYFS, or this contrasts with the idea of Jones 2020 or something, who said this. Or you might say these two writers are both talking about how gender is important for this point, or something like that. And so think of yourself as that judge, but building a sense of argument, and you're not just describing. So I'm going to share with you now a little visual which I found quite helpful about this. It was actually from a video, but I don't think we'll bother watching the whole video. But you can see here the contrast between descriptive writing and critical writing, because we want you to be doing critical writing. Everybody should be, but this is how you'd be getting. You can't get a B or an A without doing critical writing. So descriptive writing would just be giving the facts, you'd be listing details, giving information, and it's that kind of basic knowledge. So if somebody can tell me why play is important, or, you know, play happens in early years settings, or, you know, children develop as they get older, they're all kind of very basic facts. They're just reporting and listing details. But here we see, in contrast, the critical writer is evaluating or appraising the evidence. They're weighing it up. They're saying, right, so this writer here is saying one idea, but does that actually match with reality? Does that match with children who grow up in, you know, South America, or in North America, or in Africa, or in, Greenland or in the UK? What are the different cultures? What are the different experiences for gender? So you're evaluating it constantly. You might not find that's in written in the book. So, for example, if if a writer says, all children need to be completely clean and have nice clean clothes all the time, for example, you might not be able to find a source that says actually children like to be dirty and mucky and roll around in the mud. You might not find that source, but you could comment, so Smith said children need to be clean and tidy all the time, otherwise it's bad for their health. However, it is questionable whether this applies universally around the world and whether this would apply in all contexts or whatever. So you can ask the questions like that without actually having to have a source. But then after that, you do need to then follow up with the source. So you need to balance it. You can't just be putting in your questions all the time. You need to balance it with then bringing in an idea from another writer. Perhaps next you might bring in an idea about risk. Zoe did some lectures about risk. So you could talk about what balancing risks and resilience in children and connect that in. And then perhaps you could connect in an idea about development. So you haven't perhaps got a book that talks about risk and the impact upon a child's development, but you can make the link. You can say, Nicoforidou 2017 talked about how all children, it's healthy if all children experience risk. And then you could say, this writer, Murray 2016, this is similar to the idea that Murray in 2016 said that children need to explore or something. So neither book has mentioned each other, but I have made the connection in my writing. And so it's this kind of weighing up evidence and evaluating evidence, which is the critical writing. And also highlighting strengths and weaknesses. I think this is an easier thing to do. People perhaps think that critiquing is highlighting strengths and weaknesses. So if you're reading something and it says they've done some research, but they've only asked 10 children, actually that's not as strong as if they've asked hundreds of children around the world in lots of different contexts. You could say, this writer claimed this idea, but they had only spoken to children in, Southeast London or something. So it's unknown whether that would be a representative finding for the whole of the children, all of the children in the UK. So looking for weaknesses is always a helpful thing, but it's not the only part of critiquing. Also considering different points of view. As I've said, you can raise that as a question, but you can also compare it, for example, with the EYFS, the underpinning notions, underpinning principles are often helpful for that. So you could talk about, the key worker, for example, the importance of parents, partnership with parents. You could bring those kind of ideas in and just reference the EYFS and connect those in with what you're saying. Making links and connections between different materials. So that is what critical writing is. It's interweaving all of the different parts together. Okay, now I've also got a little bit of a film I'm going to show you just for a minute, where this guy talks a little bit about that. And I thought this was quite a helpful way of describing it. Oh, I've forgotten to share my computer sound, sorry. So I'll just show you just a couple of minutes of this here, and then we'll do a few last minutes of questions.
A critical analysis essay, you need to use a process to help you to go about criticizing the work, whether it's a movie, it's a poem, it's a short story, it's another essay, a speech. Whatever it is you're analyzing, you efficient and thorough, right? Okay, so you need to look at what the author's claims are, look at how or she presents those claims, and go through all the different rhetorical strategies and methods that they use, and then look at them for how effective they are. I talked about this in the previous video on how to analyze an argument. You can look back on that, and that'll help you to go through this process that I'm talking about. Having done that, then you need to come to a reasoned decision yourself. After you've done the work, you've taken notes, you've read critically, you've analyzed the argument, you come to a conclusion. Okay, this is what I think about that. Great. You need to be able to identify what your thesis statement is, because you're going to be presenting your thoughts to someone else, and you need to be effective and efficient when you do it. So you need to be able to identify a thesis. After you've come to a conclusion, you need to be able to take that thesis, write it as a concise sentence that articulates your own claim about the source. When you've done that, then you, like previous reader, you're making a promise that you need to keep. And everything you say from that point on needs to justify that thesis that you've made. So if you're saying so-and-so's essay is flawed because blah, yada, and yah, then you need to be able to explain blah, yada, and yah to prove your point, right? Or if you say it's a persuasive argument, but it forgets this, then you point that out. Or if you're saying it's a great argument because of this, whatever, right? You can analyze something critically without agreeing with it 100% or disagreeing with it 100%. There could be a gray area. You just need to be clear where you stand and be able to explain your point clearly and effectively. So once you've done that, you need to be able to identify the evidence that you're going to use to support your thesis. So what quotes, summaries, paraphrases from the text or maybe another source can you bring in to justify the point that you're trying to make? Then you need to make sure that you're using an effective process, whether the other author did or didn't. That's irrelevant because you can always be effective yourself, right? So because you're trying to come at this from a place of authority, you need to use a strong, thorough, effective process. You are less persuasive when you just seem like you're pointing out negative things, but you're not doing it in an organized way. Or if you're not justifying it or using examples to back it up, you just seem like you're whiny. You're like, well, I don't like this because no one's going to listen to you, right? But if you can say, I do not agree with this, or this is not effective because, and you explain it, it's really hard to argue. You can say, we can agree to disagree. I don't agree with your interpretation, but you cannot say someone didn't think through it or they didn't defend it if they did.
Okay. So hopefully that helped you a little bit to think about just this idea of backing up what we're saying and like you said, having that authority. And I know you guys are only first years, but you do know so much. And so be confident and be bold when you're explaining your arguments and your criticalness. And I was saying to a few students today about bringing their voice in, bringing their opinion in. Don't be afraid of that, and do just that, like he was saying. Now, one last thing I wanted to share with you, which I find really, really helpful, is something called Manchester Phrase Bank. And in fact, I'll copy the link for you into the chat box because it's something that I use myself. I recommend it to students every single year. It's just brilliant. It's actually Manchester University. Here we have, so I just typed into Google, actually, Manchester Phrase Bank, and it comes up, but I've just put you the link there in chat. And it just gives you lots of example phrases. And the reason why I love this is because sometimes when I'm writing, I forget how to have variety in my work. So this helps with that. So there's a being critical tab, which is the one that I particularly direct students to. If I click on that being critical tab, it gives me lots of different things here. So for example, identifying a weakness in something. It gives me lots of different ways that I could say this. The author overlooks the fact that something is something. No attempt has been made to quantify this. The main weakness of this study is this. But there's also lots of other words that you could use, for this. As well as the weakness one, let's see here, identifying problems or limitations, introducing problems, evaluating adjectives, introducing general criticism. So, this is the kind of thing where I was saying about bringing in questions. So, the most important of these criticisms is Smith, or, critics question the ability of risk to help children's resilience or something. And so I think you might find that helpful to give you just some different ways of saying it, but also this compare and contrast as well is really, really helpful. So you could tells you some ideas, X is different from Y in a number of ways, and there's some ideas, or introducing similarities, just gives you different ways of saying it. So I often have this window open while I'm writing. And every now and then I have a quick look at this window while I'm writing and think, oh yeah, I could use that phrase. It just increases the academic tone of your work to have some different ideas like this. Again, comparing in a sentence, indicating and similarity and so on. There's some others that you might find helpful there as well, but they're the two that I find particularly helpful, being critical and comparing and contrasting there. Super. So I know that's been a bit of a fast sort of whistle-stop tour, but hopefully that's been helpful. I think there's one more question in the chat there. Oh, it was about the 10% either way. Yeah, absolutely. Don't worry. Just to clarify, somebody's asking about attachments. You don't need to put them onto Turnitin. Only quite simply the 750 words of each entry, you put them on your Word document, but all of the attachments, we come onto your ePortfolio site and look at them there. Super. So I'm going to stop the recording